Hi everyone. Welcome to Session 3, the need for nature-based solutions in managing climate and disaster risk. There are two parts to this session. In the first part, we will take a closer look at the different approaches under NbS and the practices currently in use around the globe to manage climate and disaster risk. We will also look at the advantages of deploying NbS compared to traditional gray infrastructure solutions to manage these risks. Looking back, in August 2022, Seoul, the capital of South Korea, experienced severe flooding due to the heaviest rainfall recorded in over 80 years. This unprecedented weather event particularly affected the Gangnam district and surrounding areas. The flooding resulted in extensive damage to infrastructure, with at least 9 people losing their lives and 163 individuals in Seoul being rendered homeless. Around 2,800 buildings were reported as damaged. The floods were so severe that certain districts, such as Dongjak, recorded rainfall up to 43 centimeters. This level of precipitation overwhelmed the city's drainage systems and led to widespread power cuts and landslide warnings for 50 cities and towns. The disaster prompted a large-scale response, including relief efforts supported by donations from various celebrities through organizations like the Hope Bridge Korea Disaster Relief Association and the Seoul Community Chest of Korea. The scale and intensity of these floods have raised concerns about climate change and its impact on weather patterns. The severity of the floods also highlighted the need for improved urban planning and infrastructure to better withstand such extreme weather events in the future. Unfortunately, a similar tragedy repeated itself in July of 2023 in Cheongju City in South Korea, where 13 passengers of a bus perished in a flooded tunnel due to a flash flood in the city. The tragedy in South Korea highlighted the issues of rapid urbanization. The steady increase in the global urban population has been a notable trend for several decades. As reported by the United Nations, 55% of the world's population resided in urban areas in 2018, and this is projected to rise to 68% by 2050. This growth is particularly rapid in developing regions of Asia and Africa, outpacing the urbanization rates of more developed nations. Megacities, or cities with over 10 million inhabitants, are expanding, emerging as vital economic and cultural hubs. While these urban areas are major contributors to national economies, they also underscore the disparities in wealth between urban and rural areas. This urbanization trend poses significant challenges, including the need for adequate housing, infrastructure, efficient transportation, environmental sustainability, and addressing social inequalities. The recent COVID-19 pandemic has further influenced urban living and work patterns, suggesting possible shifts in future urbanization trends. These developments emphasize the critical need for sustainable urban development, which is essential to effectively address environmental and social impacts. In essence, the growing urban population is a fundamental element of worldwide demographic shifts, presenting a spectrum of both opportunities and challenges. This is where NbS can come in. NbS usually involves the implementation of green infrastructure, and they exist on a spectrum. There are almost entirely natural ecosystems, such as forests and wetlands at one end. At the other end, there are highly engineered features like porous pavements. In between, there are various forms of green infrastructure, like bioswales and green roofs. This spectrum reflects each solution's varying degrees of natural and engineered elements. NbS emphasizes integrating natural elements into urban design for environmental benefits, such as stormwater management and enhancement of urban biodiversity. And these approaches are increasingly seen as cost-effective and sustainable options, offering co-benefits like improving human health, enhancing biodiversity, and supporting sustainable livelihoods. They are crucial for achieving global targets in biodiversity conservation, climate change mitigation and adaptation, and sustainable development. As one of the important approaches of NbS, let's look at the green infrastructure in more detail. The concept of green infrastructure refers to a range of measures that include plant or soil systems, permeable surfaces, stormwater harvest, and landscaping. These are designed to store, infiltrate, or evapotranspirate stormwater, reducing flows to sewer systems or surface waters. Green infrastructure differs from traditional gray infrastructure by focusing on natural processes for stormwater management, offering environmental, social, and economic benefits. The spectrum of GI can range from natural ecosystems like forests and wetlands to engineered solutions like porous pavements, with features like bioswales and green roofs in between. This eco-techno spectrum helps to conceptualize the variety of GI features in urban settings and is crucial for evaluating their effectiveness in providing infrastructural services. Within the green infrastructure spectrum, there are different approaches. NbS is an umbrella concept of ecosystem-based approaches to address societal challenges. And these approaches include 1. Low-impact development relevant for urban planning. 2. Restorative approaches in integrated coastal zone management. 3. Sustainable land management approaches. 4. Integrated water resource management. 5. Integrated fire management. This session will focus on low-impact development, integrated coastal zone management, and sustainable land management. Most importantly, when we implement NbS, we have to keep in mind the 8 principles as advocated by IUCN. 1. NbS embraces nature conservation norms and principles. However, they note that while NbS embraces nature conservation, not all conservation actions necessarily qualify as an NbS. 2. NbS can be implemented alone or in an integrated manner with other solutions to societal challenges, for example, technological and engineering solutions. 3. NbS is determined by site-specific natural and cultural contexts that include traditional, local, and scientific knowledge. 4. NbS produces societal benefits in a fair and equitable way in a manner that promotes transparency and broad participation. 5. NbS maintain biological and cultural diversity and the ability of ecosystems to evolve over time. 6. NbS are applied at a landscape scale, taken to mean large spatial areas, such as watersheds or large forests, which usually combine several ecosystems, agricultural, inland waters, coastal, forest, etc., and which might in some cases, be transboundary. 7. NbS recognizes and addresses the trade-offs between the production of a few immediate economic benefits for development and future options for the production of the full range of ecosystem services. 8. NbS are an integral part of the overall design of policies and measures or actions to address a specific challenge, with a primary goal of understanding how some of these solutions enhance the adaptive capacities of the system. It is important to remember the following. NbS enhances our array of ecological strategies. Even deserts, as ecosystems, play a role in this diversity. Economic activities need not cease entirely but rather progressively shift towards sustainability. As innovation drives new solutions, many will emerge from a hybrid zone combining nature and technology. At the moment, low-impact development represents readily achievable options. These solutions are tailored to specific hazards and locales, contributing to a sustainable transition. NbS are dynamic, constantly evolving to be specific to particular hazards and locales within the broad and active realm of sustainable practices. In the urban context, green infrastructure is a strategic approach to developing interconnected and multifunctional networks of blue and green spaces that provide a wide range of environmental, social, and economic benefits and simultaneously enhance the climate resilience of cities. Urban green infrastructure includes different types of blue-green spaces such as forests, wetlands, agricultural land, public parks, private gardens, single green elements, street trees, green roofs, etc., or ponds and streams. These play a crucial role in enhancing climate adaptation and mitigation capacities and reducing negative impacts of climate change hazards such as heat waves, flooding, and drought in cities. In a city setting, NbS specifically refers to different typologies of green infrastructure that use nature's own local resources, vegetation, water, and soil, in a smart and efficient way to tackle different environmental, societal, and climate challenges instead of implementing conventional gray infrastructure or technological-based solutions. The spatial scale of NbS in cities can vary from large forested areas to small-scale stormwater systems. In addition, the role of human control or technological solutions in NbS can also vary greatly from self-regulated natural ecosystems, such as flood control provided by urban wetlands, requiring no or limited human interventions, to hybrid gray-green solutions, such as systems for the management of stormwater and urban runoff, for which technology and human intervention play a significant role. Now, let's look at some commonly used examples of green infrastructure in a city. Rain gardens. Rain gardens are gardens with native perennials and shrubs planted in a depressed land area and are designed to soak in and store stormwater runoff from roofs, driveways, and lawns. Rain gardens are an attractive way to reduce stormwater pollution and improve water quality. They help keep polluted water out of our sewers that would need to be treated at a wastewater plant or would overflow into a water body. Stormwater becomes polluted when it flows over pavement and comes into contact with automotive fluids, sediment, trash, and pet waste. Pollutants can be absorbed by the deep plant roots instead of contaminating our rivers, lakes, and streams. The next example is planter box. Planter boxes are urban rain gardens with vertical walls and either open or closed bottoms. Usually found in downtown areas, they collect and absorb runoff from streets, sidewalks, and parking lots. Ideal for areas with limited space, planter boxes can be a useful way to beautify city streets. Another good example is bioswales. Bioswales, often found along curbs and in parking lots, use vegetation or mulch to slow and filter stormwater flows. Bioswale essentially allows water to be taken to a filtration site after a rainfall event. The problem with the traditional gutter system, the problem is that water doesn't get any treatment before it goes to the river stream water body or the ground. Aside from living organisms, there are impurities like oil, grease, tar, carbon, heavy metals, and gasoline. An open swale is better than a concrete pipe but is not very effective in filtration. So, bioswale is needed. A typical bioswale would have an engineered soil mixture that filters water before it goes to the ground. Along with the soil mixture, native plants and shrubs, which are equally important for filtration, are used. A vegetated bioswale is a narrow version of a rain garden. The main difference is that the bioswale moves water somewhere else in the garden, allowing some of it to infiltrate. A rain garden is specifically meant to increase infiltration. We also have seen urban canopy being used by numerous cities. Trees absorb stormwater in their leaves and branches. Many cities have set tree canopy goals to restore the benefits of trees lost when the areas were developed. Homeowners, businesses, and community groups can participate in planting and maintaining trees throughout the urban environment. The use of strategic green spaces can not only absorb stormwater runoff but also reduce the urban heat island effect. Green streets and alleys are created by integrating green infrastructure elements into their design to store and filter stormwater. Permeable pavement, bioswales, planter boxes, and trees are among the elements that can be woven into street or alley design. In addition, green spaces can lower drought impacts and remove carbon. The use of permeable pavements is another common example by cities. Permeable pavements infiltrate, treat, and store rainwater where it falls. They can be made of pervious concrete, porous asphalt, or permeable interlocking pavers. This practice could be particularly cost-effective where land values are high, and flooding or icing is problematic. Another example is the use of green roofs. Green roofs are covered with growing media and vegetation that enable rainfall infiltration and evapotranspiration of stored water. They are particularly cost-effective in dense urban areas where land values are high and in large industrial or office buildings where stormwater management costs are likely high. Another good practice is low-impact development, a land planning and engineering design approach aimed at managing stormwater runoff as close to its source as possible. It prioritizes the preservation and use of natural features to protect water quality and associated aquatic habitat. There are many examples of low-impact development. Capture and reuse of rainwater, downspout disconnection so that the rain is drained into rain barrels or permeable areas instead of storm sewers. Soil restoration is a technique used to enhance and restore soils by physical treatment and or mixture with additives, such as compost, in areas where soil has been compacted. Soil media restoration increases the soil's water retention capacity, reduces erosion, improves soil structure, immobilizes and degrades pollutants, supplies nutrients to plants, and provides organic matter. A vegetated filter strip is a permanent, maintained strip of vegetation designed to slow runoff velocities and filter out sediment and other pollutants from urban stormwater. These are just some examples of low-impact development combining engineered and gray assets. Now, let's look at the concept of sponge cities. Since it was conceived in 2013 by Professor Kangjian Yu, the sponge city concept has presented an opportunity for Chinese cities to implement new integrated urban water management strategies. A sponge city is an innovative urban planning concept designed to tackle the challenges of increased rainfall and urban flooding due to climate change. The key idea behind a sponge city is to create an urban environment that can absorb, store, and purify rainwater effectively, much like a sponge does with water. This approach involves the integration of green infrastructure into city planning. This includes features such as parks, rain gardens, green roofs and walls, permeable pavements, and other elements that increase the permeability of urban surfaces. These features allow rainwater to be absorbed into the ground, reducing runoff and the risk of flooding. Additionally, these green spaces can help purify the water and contribute to improving the urban microclimate, thereby reducing the urban heat island effect. The sponge city concept is particularly relevant in the context of climate change, as it provides a way to mitigate the impacts of both flooding and droughts. The idea first gained significant attention in China, where it was adopted as a national strategy in response to severe urban flooding issues. Cities like Wuhan, Chongqing, and Xiamen have been pioneering this approach, setting ambitious targets for rainwater management and recycling. Cities around the world are increasingly adopting similar approaches under different names, such as water-sensitive urban design in Australia and the Middle East, sustainable urban drainage systems in the UK, and natural drainage systems in Seattle, USA. These initiatives address water management concerns, enhance urban biodiversity, provide recreational spaces, and improve overall urban livability. The implementation of sponge city principles requires a multidisciplinary approach and long-term planning involving detailed analysis of the urban watershed, soil studies, rainfall patterns, and other environmental factors. Despite the challenges, sponge cities represent a promising and cost-effective way to adapt urban environments to the changing climate while enhancing their inhabitants' quality of life. It will mean using many of these options to plan and increase the sponginess. Based on China's Sponge City Initiative, sponge cities in China must ensure that 20% of their urban land includes sponge features by 2020 and 30% by 2030, with a target of being able to retain 70% and 80% of stormwater, respectively. It has been estimated that a key reason that the southern China floods in 2020 were not as damaging as in 1998 was the investments made in nature-based solutions like sponge cities, together with tree planting and floodplain restoration. Now we have reached the end of Part 1 of Session 3. Please feel free to go back to any part of the session to get a better understanding. When you are ready, please proceed to Part 2 of Session 3.